Yeah, hello and welcome to part 2 of an 11-part series of brief videos introducing you to EPOS, a Gentes game by Stefan Risthaus, which will go to GameFound and Spieleschmiede in late June, hopefully. And this video will go into some details of the base game. And of course, there will be way more professional videos with interviews of the designer, with various parts of gameplay by professional people. So not just this one will be done on EPOS a Gentes game. But let's go into some details now. EPOS unfolds over 3 epochs, and you see them down here. These are the game rounds, and each epoch, there are 3, has 2 game rounds, and the game is finished after 6 game rounds. And each round consists of 2 phases. There is the flourishing phase, where you take markers off the game board or trigger actions in some other way. And then there is a reform phase, where you tidy up your timeline and return action markers to the game board. So let's take a look at the heart of the game, the flourishing phase. And players take turns in clockwise order, and starting with the principal. The principal is the starting player. And when it's your turn, you have to take an available action if there are still free spaces on your timeline. EPOS has a very innovative action selection mechanic, where you are taking wooden action markers off the game board, plus maybe hourglass markers, also wooden ones, and place them in your timeline as long as you are having space in there. So you cannot pass if you have space in your timeline. You have to select an action. And if you have an action marker with a double hourglass, you can place 2 single hourglasses in your timeline, or this double hourglass marker. The double hourglass marker will need less space, but it's harder to remove at the end of the game round. So here there is also some decision making involved in here. And I think it's now a good point to take a look at some of the wooden markers in the game. So we are having more than 440 wooden markers, and a lot of them are screen printed in the game. So these are the cities, ships, 1 per player, meeple, 1 per player. These are the columns. Of course, there are cubes, streets, which are not used in the base game, pioneers, the round marker over here. And these are some of the action markers here. This is the builder, so you have the illustration, plus the number of hour markers, and there may be also a cost involved in coins. So this one doesn't cost any coins, but you need to take a double-sided hourglass marker or 2 single-sided ones, whereas this one just needs 1 hourglass but costs 2 coins. More action tiles here for the builder, for the architect, the teacher, the navigator, which lets you build cities and move pioneers, bonus markers in this shape, wooden. These are the training cost tiles for your population. So these are over here. They are placed in here. And the costs are at the top. So you're picking a marker, pay the cost, and then according to the costs you can train your population in various professions. And afterwards, the chosen professions population training tiles are rearranged. So the costs are never fixed. So they are there. The principal tile, starting player tile, solo wild tile, start player, victory point tiles, blockade markers, and these are markers which are not used in the base games. They are for the various scenarios, But these population markers, they are used. So each player has 6 of these markers and places them on their player board. And the more you have, the better options you have during the game. The actions are tax collector, so you are simply getting some money here. Then principal, you are making sure that you are first in the next game round, because if you are always last, let's say in a 4-player game, your options are somewhat limited. And in all these spaces here at the start of a game round, there are wooden markers which you are picking up. But of course you also see that in some cases not all markers are placed. This marker is only placed in a 3 plus player game, here in a 4-player game. The teacher is right here, so it lets you train your population over here. The architect is down here, so it allows lets you to draw additional civilization cards, and the cards in the game are very, very powerful. The base game has 54 cards, and they are numbered here for the epoch, and I get to them in a second. So the architect lets you draw additional civilization cards, whereas the navigator over here lets you recruit new pioneers and build cities. With a pioneer you are moving, so this is in contrast to Gentes, and you also see in contrast to Gentes the cities are named, and with pioneers you may move across these borders to adjacent areas and later build cities. That is a navigator action. And last but not least, there is the builder action, which lets you play civilization cards from your hand over here, and it's only allowed when it's your turn to play a single civilization card from your hand if you fulfill all the requirements. And let's take a look at the well. So it's from the first epoch, and you need to have at least this minimum number of population on your player board, otherwise you are not allowed to play it. Well, it's not a powerful card, you are getting 0 base glory points, but it has some synergy effects, so there may be more glory points involved the more cards with the same symbol you are having, and it has a special action over here. So you see the stable immediately gives you 2 glory points and an additional population in this profession. And these are the cards from the second epoch, so you're getting more points, but you need more population, and this is also a requirement. You need to have at least 1 temple city on the board. And this is from a card from the third epoch of the game. It gives you lots of points here, but you need lots of population, so basically a full player board. And you see all cards from the third epoch, they do not have synergy symbols anymore, but they are still powerful. So base game has 54 of these cards involved. So these are the various actions in the game. You are only playing a single one at a time, so there's hardly any downtime. And when all players are finished, there's a reform phase, and you tidy up your timeline and carry out some administrative steps, and some of your cards may have effects that only trigger in the reform phase. The base game can be also played solitaire, and there are 2 options for it. So in the first option you have to fulfill some tasks to win the game. So for example, having 2 bonus point markers and at least 70 glory points. But there's also the solo challenge, where you are playing up to 10 solo games in a row, and you try to get as many challenge points these are described in the rules booklet, as possible. So that is the base game, and or some details of the base game of EPOS. And tomorrow in the next video I will take a look at the first scenario of EPOS, a Gentes game by Stefan Risthaus, and the first scenario is Kingdoms. So thank you, see you tomorrow, and thanks a lot, bye bye.